our most profound Mahayana motivation for engaging in listening, reflecting on these Ngondro practices, and with the idea of putting these into practice for the benefit of ourselves, of course, the benefit of all beings, the benefit of the world. Okay. All right, so in this session, we're looking at mandala offerings and as an accumulation of merit. And then subsequently, we looked at all the purification ones. So then subsequently, when I return back, 3 weeks, then 2 weeks. Anyway, when I come back from Bunbury, we'll be looking at Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga for those couple of weeks as the Guru of the Ngondro, specifically on Guru devotion. Okay. All right. So, one thing sticks in my mind when Lama Zopa Rinpoche was last here, 2006, and Ngondro was here, and the very first session, everyone got out their mandala sets. Obviously, they'd been practicing that Ngondro showed people how to offer the mandala. And, people were sitting there with their, some a bit awkwardly, some less. And Rinpoche, and then he pointed, whether it was there or there, I don't know, to Venerable Robina and go, take a photo, film that one, because you can imagine hers was bigger than everybody else's. Yeah. So that's in my mind, the joy of Rinpoche seeing that. So we're talking about mandala offerings. We just started. And anyway, so it's this combination of accumulation of merit and making the offerings to the Guru. I mean, we could look at the convention of offering mandalas came initially from, well, we could say it came from, initially the request for Lama Atisha to come to Tibet, and the offerings were offerings of gold, because it was I always get confused which one was in prison, Jamche or Yeshi. Jamche was on in, anyway, whichever one was on in prison, the king that was in prison, and the price of him not being killed and being released was gold equal to the weight of his body. Which, I just look at the cost of gold these days and go, oh, that's a lot of gold. Anyway, they managed to collect gold up to his head. And then he said, no. Take the gold that you've got and don't collect anymore. Take the gold you've got and go and request for Lama Atisha to come. So anyway, big, long story. But that's what happened. So that, I guess, was the first, symbolically, when we're requesting teachings, we offer mandala. That's one of the functions that we do when we make a request. So in terms of our Ngondro practice, the accumulation of mandala offerings, as I said, is about accumulation of merits. So it's an action of generosity. So giving, making offerings to the Buddhas, making offerings to the Gurus, making offerings to the Sangha community as objects worthy of respect. And so this practice of making 100,000 mandala offerings, and along with, for example, water bowl offerings, sometimes you can also see the water bowl offerings is excellent. The water bowl offerings accumulation is also, can be regarded as a purification practice as well. So you can see it both ways, but this is, it's a generous offering. It's a symbolic offering of generosity, and then we visualize everything that we're offering. So this one, another one for the accumulation of merit is making of Buddha images. Now, traditionally, that's done by making satsas. So traditionally, they were made out of clay. Often if you go on pilgrimage and you go to some of the monasteries and they show you, oh, you know, Lama Tsongkhapa made this and do. Yeah, I remember having a satsa of a clay one that His Holiness Sakyatrism, the previous Sakyatrism offered. And it was a little Lama Tsongkhapa one made of clay, and I just sort of treasured that because just very, very plain, but it had been painted. Sometimes I painted, sometimes not. So these satsas, you know, traditionally made of clay, you know, with a wooden mold. These days, like we're making the plaster ones down in Bunbury for the stupa, and so you can get molds that do many, many at once. So we're doing that, and then you can also offer water ones, right? Offering in water, that was also a tradition, which is much quicker. So you sort of go to the river or go to the beach, and you know you have this mold. Like Greg has one where he was offering, and he was sort of getting the technique of offering with the water, just. And you can do that with water bowl offerings as well. Water offerings, you know, go to the beach, I don't know, take your little bucket and get creative. It's wonderful. It's just like, yeah, it doesn't have to be hard. Yeah, so they're representations, like the satsas of the enlightened mind of the Buddha. So whether it's stupa representations, stupa statues, satsas, and so forth. And also in Rinpoche's house, I think it's still houses it was, but that Joss house in California is being sold, I believe. So the one in Washington State. And I had the experience at Aptos whenever the news came that someone had passed away, which usually came from the, you know, the FPMT press for the dead list. And when those names came through, the nuns would get busy making satsas. So each person gets a satsa, not a satsa, but of a stupa. A stupa, actually, made from a little stupa about this high. So very wonderful, and you know, dedicated as soon as possible for them. Anyway, so many different practices can fall under this category. Just on the satsas, there was the story in Mandala one time, in the Mandala magazine, of a student who'd really wanted to do the prostrations. I might have mentioned it last time. Really wanted to do the prostrations practice and kept going to Lama Zopa Rinpoche. You know, and Rinpoche would say, make satsas, make 700,000. I think I did mention it last time, make 700,000 satsas, 700,000 satsas. And he said, thank you very much, Rinpoche. And the prostrations. This went on 3 times. And eventually Rinpoche said, okay, go do the prostrations. And he went and he was at Bogaya and went and got the prostration board. And he didn't even get to the stupa, Mahabodhi stupa, fell flat on it, broke his back, fell flat on his back, slipped over. Guess what he ended up doing? 700,000 satsas. So good to listen to the advice. Anyway, so satsas, but we're going to focus in particular on the mandala offerings, you know. So Lama Tsongkhapa, as we know, made over 1 million mandala offerings, and he was using stones or boulders, you know. And traditionally, Lama Tsongkhapa would make mandala offerings of 23 heaps. When we say the heaps, they're all the things that we visualize on the mandala base. So we have like 7, 23, the Kala Chakras, 25 heaps. And of course, we've got 23 for Tara. And the usual one that we do here for those requesting offerings or in Guru Puja and so forth is 37 heaps, a number of different heaps. Yeah. So when Lama Tsongkhapa did that in the retreat, Walker, then he wore down the stones, and so his arms were bloody. This is not a requirement. Okay, we don't have to go to that extreme. Even I remember another story, and I can't remember who it was, and somebody requesting teachings and along, in Tibet, and they didn't have they want to offer mandala. Of course, we can do with our hands, but they picked up some. No, what they did, they wanted to make, a mandala with the heaps. So this guy did pipi on the sand to make it wet so he could build the mandala, like we build sandcastles. Anyway, with a pure view, you can use whatever. I don't know why. Well, it wouldn't have been at a beach, which is why they didn't just get the water from the beach. Anyway, so it is said. Okay, so, and also with, I remember one of the pilgrimages in Indonesia, and there was all the sort of the lamas, and we'd be at Borobudur making all these prayers and practices, I think, sort of every morning. Anyway, so, and because we're all standing up, did that, and we'd have this, all these katas joined together, so everyone would be standing around with all these katas, and the lama leading it just put a mala like that on top of the kata, and it's like, oh, you can offer like that, And you see that, people offering the mandala like that. I think I've seen Geshe Zopa like that, doing like this rather than. So we have when we offer the short mandala, and we use the fingers, and it's like that's Mount Meru, and the other fingers conjoining other 4 continents, and then we visualize the sun and the moon in the sky above. So that's, we don't have to carry around a mandala set. We can be very handy. My mandala set, this is very light now. It used to be 5 kilos, but now it's much lighter. And then when you travel overseas, take out the rice, and which makes it handy because it's just like wherever I land, I go, okay, got to go buy some rice. Mandala set. Anyway, so the term, let's backtrack a bit. Oh, and yes, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, of course, people who write to Rinpoche and get life practices. And one of the students who, reasonably new student, and Rinpoche, one of the many practices, was 700,000 mandala offerings. But then Rinpoche actually sent her a mandala set, which was absolutely beautiful. I mean, wouldn't that inspire you to be doing? Because, yeah, fantastic. So mandala, so it's a Sanskrit term, and kilkor in Tibetan, and it literally means circle. Of course, we have different meanings in different contexts. So when we kilkor, so kil is essence and core is take. And we have the thing of, in relation to circumambulations, kora, do kora. And I remember one time when a bird had, someone brought a bird into Vajrayana Institute because it had just been hit by a car and died. And Lab Rinpoche was there, and he said to me, do kora. And I was thinking, well, he only said one. And I thought, no, kora is... So you go around one time to say, I think he means more than one. In other words, circumambulated around the stupa. Anyway, so kilkor, essence, and plus take. So because such vast accumulations of merit are gathered through making mandala offerings, it is called in general taking the essence. So early on in FPMT's history, Harvey Horrocks, who lives in the US, he made many mandala offerings. He was at the beginning of the setting up of Institute Lama Tsongkhapa, which is in 1977. So you can see he's been around a while. Anyway, so he made so many. Lama Zopa Rinpoche said that the fact that FPMT, gained money finances was due to Harvey's mandala offerings. So then everyone subsequently would be going to Harvey and asking him to make mandala offerings. He did. I remember he made, 50 when I was involved with the prison project. He made 50,000. He made a commitment to make 50,000 mandala. Wow. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, he was sort of, I think it was while he was interim director, acting director for a while. Yeah, so we can see vast accumulations of merit, right? And be inspired by these stories. So in terms of within Tibetan Buddhism, it's seen as according to Buddhist cosmology, this celestial abode of Buddhas, and each Buddha has their own particular celestial abode and many other holy beings within that. And that visualization of that, I've heard Lamas say that this is the most important thing. Say, those of us who do highest yoga tantra, and there's a description of the mandala for that deity. Some are very complex, some are less, and but that's the most important visualization is the visualization of the celestial abode, the Buddha field, the mandala. So where that one resides. And again, if you go to they have His Holiness Temple where they have Kalachakra, mandala, 3D. You can walk around and do core around and everything. And at some of the other monasteries where they have the three big ones, the three main highest yoga tantra, Chakrasambhara, Gurusamaja, and Yamataka, the three that you can circle, and at Kopan as well. So you can it's great, these big 3D ones. How would I do? Oh. I think we might be out of battery.
There's the singular one.
Yeah, the battery's gone.
I'll see what
Feel free to come closer as well, but yeah, just get some more batteries in there. Okay. Come as close as you wish. Okay. Sounds like we've got action.
Where would you like it?
Thank you.
There we go.
So in terms of the practice, we recite the prayer for the mandala offering. So we did just now and during our prayers at the beginning, when we did the short mandala offering, which we often do with the hand gesture that I've just explained. And people like to put the mala or something there, maybe some jewels or something in the middle, thinking that I'm not offering empty hands, empty mandala. So, I mean, it's what is helpful for our minds, really. You can do like that, or as I said, you can do like this. Even those who have a dorje and bell, you can offer the bell because that represents a universe. many sort of different ways. So when we're doing it, we visualize, we do the visualization mentally, of course. And that's why it's good at the very beginning, particularly with the long mandala offering, to spend time on the description and the visualization of the mandala and what all those heaps are. Because once we get to do it in a puja, it all goes pretty fast. And even if you've got a mandala that you're just trying to keep up and get to the end, maybe it's too much to focus on. But to actually, we're using the mandala set or our hands to construct that symbolic universe, to visualize as clearly as possible, is how we get the merits of that. And so I just wanted to mention from here, yes. So here in Pabonka Rinpoche Liberation of Palm, Kil Core, so as we said, the Kil is the essence or center, and Core the circling. So extracting the essence, to extract the essence is what he says. So he says, the mandala is usually circular. Its shape, however, should conform with your karmic propensities. So square mandalas and the like are acceptable. So often when we have the square, we still have the circle within, and then everything that represents there. Yeah. So in the 50 verses of Guru devotion, says, with folded hands, offer your guru, your teacher, mandalas and flowers. And so there's a story of John Tompa visited Gampopa, and he was, doing meditative practices, and his mandala set was over there gathering dust. And he says, what's going on here? Why aren't you making the mandala offerings? And Gampopa said because he'd been in contemplation, he'd become so engrossed that he didn't make the offerings. And then John scolded him, of course. He said, Atisha was a much better meditator than you, and yet he made mandala offerings 3 times a day. So those of us who have that highest yoga tantra commitments, we're obliged to do 3 times a day. And it says to the Vajra master from whom we receive those empowerments. And it said, if you fail to offer in the morning, you get a gross transgression. If you fail to offer at noon, you get a gross transgression. If you fail to offer in the evening, you get a gross transgression. Right. So it's a commitment to do that. And once we know the visualization, we know unmistakenly how to make the mandala offering, how to actually make it. And this is like, we had a session here last year. I don't know if any of you came to that. You were at that? No, mandala offering. Anyway, we had I think Sunday afternoon, whatever. We did it on a few of the ritual practices. Anyway, so we had the one on the mandala offering. We'll see how we go with timing. And so I'm going to say about that. Once you know what to do, and then maybe you can't visualize everything, but at least you can start to build up the visualization. For example, it's here in Liberation, the palm of your hand, wish fulfilled in golden sun. It's quite, lays out even not just how to do, but it has as well the whole the legend historically. Because as we start with Mount Meru in the center, and then His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, Mount Meru, there's no Mount Meru, it doesn't exist. And you go, well, hold on a minute. Of course, not in this world system as it is. But once you have the visualization and that you're at least practicing this, and I have to say, Miffy at Langri Tangpa has done a YouTube video. She had audio before, I think it's still there, of doing it slowly so that you can slowly build it up. Anyway, so the benefits then of offering mandala. So one thing to think is that it includes the practices of the 6 perfections. So generosity is offering perfumes or saffron water. So I will get this out. So when you tied it up very nicely, you tie it up very nicely and you've got to untie it. So we keep it in a cloth for protection, and also because you've got a whole bunch of, well, I've now got mainly rice because I used to have mainly all precious jewels, and Geshe Sultram at Chenrezig said it's good to not make too much noise with your mandala set, and he said, you know, the tradition is the best quality grain, and so also had to go to the organic shop and get the best quality grain. So you start with this base, it's called the golden base, and this one looks golden, which is a relief. And because, you know, after a while, they don't look so golden. Some of these are silver, some are gold, right? So this becomes the ground, the holy ground, literally, physically, the earth, the ground. And when you first get it, when it says offering saffron, it says, in the text, you'll see it says to use a badjum peel, which is like substances from a cow that come from somewhere around the neck, because apparently in their neck they've got whatever it is that makes everything they eat pure, purifies everything. So I guess they don't get sick if that's operating. I don't think it's a thyroid gland. So I'd stop if it is. Anyway, so I'm not a cow, that's right. But anyway, these substances, and I asked Geshe Zopa about that because somebody had given me one that I used and mixed with the saffron and everything, and I'd run out. And he said, oh, people don't really use that anymore, so I don't think they make it anymore, which might be to do with the, you know, protecting cows. I'd like to think that. Anyway, so it says to put this mix, but we can just use saffron water. And then, what's the first one? You put your thumb in the middle, and then you go around with half the base, like this, bringing your index finger around, dipped in the saffron water, bring it around, and then you, that's the thumb. Then you change over and you put your index finger in the middle, and then you bring that around. So it's a sort of visualizing it. It said we should do this at least once a year. Sometimes it says once a month, but in general, once a year. Just visualizing that you're, you know, cleansing the base of it. So that's that offering. I mean, there are other things to do, but that's that offering saffron to the base at least once a year. So that's that offering of perfumes. So we can think of that as offering one of the 6 perfections. And then in terms of morality, making offerings evenly with no untidiness. So I don't know if you've watched when His Holiness Dalai Lama is teaching at the very beginning. So they don't like build up all the heaps like this. It's one big. It's not like this. It's sort of like a big platter type thing on a stem, like big one. And it's just the rice comes beautifully down evenly. Nothing falls off. You know, it's all just very slow. And also when Jado Rinpoche was here earlier in the year, similarly when they were smaller and they were using a mandala base, but similarly it was all very careful, and that's the idea of you doing it with control, with discipline. It's not supposed to be flying everywhere, so I've got yet to perfect that one. Untidiness. So without any untidiness, something to work on. And the offering and the patience is the patience harmlessly removing any insects found in or on the mandala set, right? Of course, if you use something like rice or another grain, then more likelihood that you're going to have some insects. I haven't yet had insects, but when Geshe Sutram gave that instruction at Chen Rezig, and I finally, sort of worked with my mind to think, because at one point I was like, but Rinpoche gave me those, and so-and-so gave me those, the jewels, right? And I was mentioning that to Geshe Sharab, and he said, oh, you Westerners, you're so attached. It's just like, really? You think it's a pure thing, and then India goes, what? So anyway, I'm like, okay, I'm happy with this rice. I bought a very nice organic, blah, blah, long grain, because they chip. You don't want a short grain. And then I go into the Gompa, and a mouse pops out of my bag.
Oh,
No, the first time, actually, first time what happened was I came in and I lifted up the bag and everything was just falling out the bottom. So it was probably rats, that one. We had rats, we had mice, we had everything there. And then another time, and because somebody had already said me, there's a mouse. We saw a mouse there. And then I open it up and go, hello. Yeah. So I haven't yet had any of those problems here, I have to say. But I know at some centres they have a smaller one, but they put it in a big, like cake tin with a lid or some, put it in a closed bag or whatever. Yeah, sealed, exactly. So, yes, removing insects. I have to say for myself, it's removing, because, when Geshe Dawa said, don't have any, like, I have got some jewels in here. I've got one dear nun friend who gives me these ones, little pearls. And Geshe Dawa told us, don't have ones with holes in them, because sometimes people think, oh, well, I'll put the beads of my broken mala in there. It's okay to put a full mala, but and it's just like, oh, now I have to go through, because the very first one that I had these tiny beads, and getting them out, that was an act of patience. It's ongoing, these tiny little beads, and removing them out. I mean, in a way, you better just what I did with this one, just start again with a new batch of rice. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it. So that's patience, joyous effort, being diligent in offering the mandala. And then the perfection of meditative concentration. So when we're making the mandala offering, that our mind is single-pointedly focused, free from distractions on the mandala. And if you're just learning it, believe me, you're going to be single-pointed focused, but keeping that as we go along. And the wisdom one, knowing unmistakably the arrangement of the heaps, whether it's 7 heaps, 23, 25, 37, whatever heaps, that to know how they're arranged. As I said, I hope we'll have time to look at that. If not, yeah. So Ngondro Rinpoche says, if you're wealthy, you should have a mandala set made of gold, silver, copper, or the like. Otherwise, stone, slate, ceramic, or wooden mandalas will do. I haven't seen personally a wooden one. I've seen those ones that have like beaded, like it's a woven or beaded ones. The mandala base should be as big as possible and at least no smaller than your own food bowl. And I mention that because you can get tiny ones that maybe the base is about that big. That's certainly bigger, it's smaller than my breakfast bowl diameter. Maybe not much, but it is. And also for myself, That's too small. Like my hands are too clumsy to be very fine like this, making a mandala. So as big as possible, and that, well, this is a fairly standard size, and in general we don't, have them like here or probably anywhere in Australia any bigger than that. But as I mentioned, the one with offering to His Holiness, quite a big sort of platter thing. Or that time, Venerable Rabina Rinpoche pointed out, Venerable Rabina, she had a much larger one. I'm not sure if that's the one, because at Vajrayana Institute one time she wasn't there. I mean, she had been staying there, but I think it was Losar or something, and she said to offer her mandala on the altar. Now, our altar is a bit like this. I mean, Vajrayana's altar is a bit like this, so it's a little bit tricky. Plus, it's got glass doors across the section. So anyway, I managed to draw it out of a very big bag, very heavy, and put it there. I think it's still there, because at one time she said, "Oh, I'm going to take that with me," but she never did, so it's still there, that particular one, which is very nice. And like when she was there, because she'd be in the room next to me, and I'd hear sort of clunk, 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 because she did have a lot of just clunk, 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 doing many mandala offerings in the night time. Yeah. Okay. The content of a mandala could be jewels, grains, and medicines, or pebbles, sand, and so on. Will do. If you're rich, you build up a huge merit collection by offering the best. You must offer mandalas at least once a year or once a month. There's a big difference. But those of us, as I say, who have commitments beyond that, it's 3 times a day. Yeah, so I explained that. Okay, we'll go back here. So that's the 6 perfections. And we've looked at the disadvantages of not offering the mandala. So when we do as a Ngondro practice, in general, we start with offering the what we call the long mandala offering, the 37 heaps, and then that becomes, the number of times you do that, say you decide, okay, I'm going to accumulate 100,000, that means consecutively every day until you're up to that. So say you offer one time, the long mandala offering is probably best, because then the accumulations after that are the short Saji Perky, and again, Geshe Sutram, when we were doing the Lama Tsongkhapa, the Guru Yoga retreat, maybe the first or second time, and he showed us, it wasn't about this accumulation, but at one point in whatever session he said, do many, short mandala offerings, alternating with the refuge prayer. So you'd say the refuge prayer once, and then the mandala offering. And Geshe was doing, and he'd be like, put some heaps, I couldn't keep up with him, like Sashi, and then it was going like this. So you can, if you're like a Geshe, get very fast in that. So that becomes the accumulation. The number that you accumulate is based on the shorter one. But again, in the very first session, it's like with Vajrasattva, the very first session that you do, we minimize the number, and that becomes our minimum number that we've got to do every day. So say you do one long mandala and one short mandala, that's going to be your minimum every day. But of course, that's not enough to accumulate in a short period of time. Yeah, so on the one side, it says these are all the benefits of being very precise and so forth. But on the other side, I've seen people even not doing the Ngondro, because I don't know who's doing Ngondro or whatever, but in general, learning how to do the mandala, but then not doing like, again, Ngondro obviously encouraged everyone to do in front of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, no matter how clunky, to actually show that you're putting in the effort, and people get shy of doing that because they're, oh, I don't do it properly. Well, you're never going to do it properly until you actually practice. So I would be more encouraging to, once started, to really, whatever stage of visualization you can do, whatever amount of, and then that inspires other people. They can't do it perfectly, so I could do it not perfectly. And how are we going to, not even perfectly, but how are we ever going to familiarize if we don't just practice? Not, of course, practice at home. Well, every practice is also making a mandala offering too. So it's best not to be too, just mainly to focus on the visualization, the symbolic meaning and deeper meanings associated with offering the environment, offering all the precious objects in our world. Another way, of course, Samantabhadra, multiplying of offerings, where you sort of visualize, okay, on here I'm offering one mandala here, and then the 25 around and 25 around and 25 around, and we can think about it being on every atom of space. And when the Jade Buddha, the Jade Buddha statue that now abides in the Great Stupa in Bendigo, when that was touring around, mainly through a lot of Asian countries and so forth, it did tour around, like we had it in Sydney. I don't know if it came here. Did it come here in memory? The big Jade Buddha? No. Anyway, so it did come to Sydney, because their difficulty was also always finding a place where it can be on display, a place big enough for it to be on display. So that, anyway, so I know one time at least it was in this, it was in a Vietnamese, well, not in the temple, but actually outside. They built an area and had it on display there. Another time was at Darling Harbour, which was fantastic, having it at Darling Harbour. And I remember going in, and it was a solar eclipse, I think. It was anyway, a multiplying merit day. And there we were there, and then Geshe Dawa and his entourage came along. So it was really lovely. Everyone went to see the Jade Buddha right in the, forecourt, right in the public area of Darling Harbour. Fantastic. Yeah. All right. So, so the main thing is just thinking that we're offering all these objects, sensory objects, religious items, whatever, to the Buddhas, holy beings, to spiritual teachers. We can visualize the merit field, which is what generally happens when we do in a daily practice and so forth, and offering, freely with a heartfelt motivation to the objects of refuge, those who we trust and take refuge in, and reflect on the positive impact of that, the impact that has on our mind, on our heart, particularly when we engage in it repeatedly, again and again, something like that. Okay. So in general, so this gompa, you can think of this gompa as a mandala. So this is the east, right? Well, it's not probably precisely the east, but unless we put the gompa on an angle, sort of eastern direction. Okay, so we take it as the east. That's why gompas are made with the altar in the east, because this is the west in that direction, or it might be slightly. I'm going to get out the phone and see exactly precisely, more or less, more or less. it's a bit confusing to me. I still have this sort of Eastern state mind that thinks that should be East. I'm totally flipped around. In any case, we take it as East, and we have the Eastern. If you see a mandala, it has we say the doors in all the cardinal directions, gates or doors. So here's the Eastern direction. So generally, you enter a mandala from the east. So having that facing you, right, in general. So that's the Eastern direction. And these directions also, like when we offer what we say the 4 continents, we do visualize those 4 continents. We here in this world system are said to be the southern continent. So Zambuling or Jambudvipa, southern continent. And that one, so the 4 continents are around Mount Meru. So Mount Meru is in the center, and then you have these 4 continents around. This is part of what you're constructing in it. And so you have in the east, you have, so east, yeah. Let me just look at the wish fulfilling golden sun in this direction. I'm not going to go through every bit of it because we don't have time for all of that, and it is in there in great detail. So we visualize everything being offered around Mount Meru. Before we do that with the mandala base, we take some grain. I'll have to hold this there to take some grain. And it said that we use they say the thickest part of your forearm. For me, that's up there. A lot of us use the wrist, but it says to actually do 3 times clockwise direction as a purification, as a sort of visualizing we're removing any obscurations and any negativities, so our own, of course. And then 3 times in the opposite direction, bringing in all the blessings and so forth. So, yeah. And then we place some grain on the top, and then we place the next ring, and then we put some around the outside, and then Mount Meru in the beginning, and then we're building up those heaps. So the first heap is the east, which is, we visualize it's made of the 7 precious things: gold, silver, lapis, I think it's copper. No, copper's not in there. Coral, gems, diamonds, pearls. So that's there. And then in the south is composed of, again, the 7 precious jewels, and so forth. And then in the west, precious jewels that grants all our wishes and so forth. It says the horns of diamonds. The horns are of diamonds, the hooves of sapphire, because it's a wish-fulfilling cow. So we're visualizing this cow, and the tail is the great tree. The color is red. Its beauty is magnificent. So there's many, many different, what do we call it, visualizations to do in relation. And then in the north is the crops that need no cultivation, absolutely perfect crops, right? The fruit has no skin or covering, is clean, easy to pick, tasty, beautiful to the eye, completely satisfies all desires. Right, so that's those. And then around each one of those, so they're the continents, there's 2 subcontinents. And so we establish those 2 subcontinents. I'm not going to go right, left, right, because really, unless we're all practicing, it makes that difficult. And then on the next level, we have other offerings: precious jewel, precious queen, precious minister, precious elephant, precious horse. So we go in the cardinal directions, and then we go in between, what do we call the intermediate directions. So there's diagrams for how to do this. So be reassured, there's diagrams in the wish fulfilling golden sun on Lama Yeshi's lamayeshi.com. Okay, so I could continue going through this. In the short mandala offering, as we say, the 7, we visualize Mount Meru, the thought for worlds in each direction, and then the sun and the moon. So that's what we visualize there in the 7. So you can use mandala offering to mandala base to do the 7, but mostly we don't, because by the time you've got your mandala set open, it's Saji Perky's over. But it is, you can do. Yeah. Okay. So then we're building up each level. On the next level up, because these are piling upwards, we have the 8 goddesses. So again, in the cardinal direction and the intermediate directions. And yeah, so we visualize, so there's Mount Meru in the middle. We visualize the 8 goddesses in a ledge up around Mount Meru. So we visualize everything being 3D, which using a mandala set makes it possible to do like that. Okay. So we've got all these goddesses, music, garlands, beauty, dancing, flowers, incense. These are all the offerings, lights, perfume. And then the top level is the sun and the moon. And then, we pile up in the middle, precious umbrella, victory banner, these offerings. And then right at the top, we have the Dhamma chakra that goes on top. So it says all the offerings, with the exception of the sun and the moon, victory banner and umbrella, and all the offering goddesses are piled up on the base of the golden hills, and then above the hills are the offering goddesses, above them the remaining offerings, filling the rest of space. As I said, we can visualize mandalas on every atom of space. Well, I didn't finish saying about when the Jade Buddha was traveling around, because they used to have a website for when it was traveling around, and in I think Vietnam and maybe some other countries as well. But actually you'd see, and actually when it was in Sydney at this Vietnamese, maybe it's the Vietnamese, so they have such pure devotion, the Vietnamese temple there. When the photos were taken, you could see layers of mandalas in the sky, like layers and layers and layers. So they used to have these, and I remember we were at another event and the lamas were there, and it was just like, oh, well, let's show them the photos and see what they say. And we showed them the photos, and not one of them said a word, anything. So they weren't going to say, oh, yes, of course, or nothing, nothing. But you could see these layers of mandalas, actual universes in light surrounding. So it's like, wow. And it's often this thing of you can't see them with the naked eye, but you experience, like, I used to think, like when I went to the one in Western Sydney, it was sort of like, I remember going there for one event where it was like at night and we're doing all, and I felt like later reflecting, I thought, that was sort of like, I was like a silly little schoolgirl, you know. It was that sort of youthful joy, you know, really. And people who were in the Blue Mountains who weren't there, they said they could see the lights from there. Yeah. So you feel I guess, very joyful mood, but you can't see, or at least I can't see with the naked eye. So yeah, then we have the descriptions of how to do the offer. I will attempt to do the offering. And then at the end, anyway, so if we were offering the long mandala, we'd then do Sajipurki at the end, at least do that one. If it's before teachings, there'll be a requesting mandala offering. So we make that request to for the teachings, even like, you know, say next time we'll have Geshe show up here and we'll make that request, even though he's already accepted to come, right? So we put in that previous request, that's been accepted, but we still do that traditional of making the offering. And then at the end, a Thanksgiving mandala offering, which has a slightly different few words. Because I remember one time at Chenrezig Institute, because every time we started a new module for the basic program, you'd do the same. You'd offer a mandala offering. And one time, and the long mandala offering with Geshe-la's name in there was on the front and back of this sheet. And one time, I didn't even think about what I was doing, and Geshe-la said, "Oh, well, the teaching's finished. You just did the Thanksgiving." He proceeded to teach, don't worry. I mean, of course, you're dying of embarrassment, but there you go. That's my pride. And so then after the short mandala, generally, as it's advised, this is part of, you know, the 7 limb comes after the 7 limb practice. Then we would do the requesting, special request for the 3 great purposes, which we do when we, in general, we do when we do Guru Puja. I prostrate and go for refuge to the Guru and the 3 precious gems. Please bless my mind. There are different versions of this. I'm requesting you immediately to pacify all the wrong conceptions from incorrect devotion to the Guru up to the subtle dual view of the white, red, and dark visions that exist in my minds and the minds of all sentient beings. So that's the purification one. I'm requesting you to immediately generate all the right realizations from Guru devotion up to enlightenment in my mind and the minds of all mother sentient beings. So gaining the realizations. I'm requesting you to pacify all outer and inner obstacles to actualizing the entire graduated path to enlightenment in my mind, the minds of all sentient beings. And so that would then be an addition if we're doing as part of a daily practice. Okay. So it's good to reflect on what, how the Buddhas, how all the holy beings receive the objects of offering. So when we do offer a mandala, I can do it with my hands. So we can offer a mandala and we can dissolve it towards us, requesting blessings, or we can dissolve it outwards, right? Like that. You know, I used to sit in front of the translator at Vajrayana Institute when he would lead very slowly the man so we do it quite slowly. And because, you know, the director would be saying, tell him to speed up. I mean, it's nice that people get the tune, but, you know, he would be sitting there and it was like you could see that he was visualizing the whole thing. And then he'd dissolve outwards and you really felt that the mandala was dissolving. Because this is, you know, when when we like when you have an empowerment, like next year we've got the announcement that Jado Rinpoche will be bestowing the coloured chakra empowerment in Bendigo at the Great Stupa. And they build a very big, elaborate mandala that then you can't see until after you've had the initiation. And then it's made of coloured sands, and then at the end they just go whoosh. Oh, they actually do a few whooshes, but to dissolve it, it's just like, that beautiful thing that took so long. Actually, when we were at Chen Rezig just now for the 50 years celebration, well, I was only there a tiny bit of time, but the Serajay monks had created a medicine Buddha mandala that wasn't dissolved. It got lacquered, and I guess it's might be still in the Gompa or somewhere. And then they made another one. I don't know whether that got dissolved or not. Yeah.
Why do they do that? Lacquer it? Because isn't that
actually the lacquer, to my mind, didn't look good. The lacquer itself, or I don't know what they use. It would be very hard to do because you just try not to disturb anything. Well, it's against. Well, it wasn't being made for an empowerment. Yeah. So there are, we have printed ones, like when we do Medicine Buddha here, we have the printed mandala so that you've got something to visualize, images to visualize. It's true. But, the idea is that it's a reminder of impermanence, so that we dissolve it completely. Yeah. And it's always and then, of course, when Vajrayana Institute was having all the conferences, and many of the conferences, the Gyoto monks made a mandala there on a big, it was quite, bigger than that. Anyway, we've got actually a board out there that looks like it was made for those big mandala offerings. And then at the end, after dissolving it, you disperse it in a waterway. So when His Holiness Dalai Lama was bestowing the coloured chakra, and did you go to the one in Sydney? Yeah. And we stayed in the Horden Pavilion, and His Holiness went off with the entourage. It's less than 10 minutes to get to the, where was it? Yeah, to the harbour, Cape Cove or whichever cove around the harbour. I was just like, oh, it helps when you have a police escort. They got there, and we were watching it in the venue. And then it gets dispersed. Okay, that was fine. But when the Gyoto monks were doing at the happiness conferences, we weren't allowed to disperse it in Sydney Harbour. I'm talking Sydney Harbour here, because it would pollute Sydney Harbour. Because the idea is you're taking all those blessings to all the beings in the water, every single grain of sand. We did, when we had the Tashi Lumpo monks, did a big mandala in the middle of the Gompa at Vajrayana Institute, and we went to Cook's River and it got dissolved in there. And the local council didn't seem to object. They probably didn't know. But the idea is that, yeah, and particularly, like, I know with His Holiness going to another colour chakra in India, that they make sure that they're using not toxic dyes or anything. It's all natural substances. Anyway, so that idea of reminder of impermanence. So we can think about in general, let's just think about in general how our practice of generosity in any case affects us, affects our practice. Of course, this is over and above whatever benefits the recipients receive. But how does that help us in our practice? That's not a rhetorical question. If anybody, well, I'll start, because the practice of generosity, it's immediately like, it's in every faith, it's in every, just generally in society, counteracts that ego, counteracts the miserliness that says, maybe even saying, I don't have anything to give. And this is where maybe a practice such as mandala offerings, where whatever you've got, you offer, you know, you can use your fingers, you've got your fingers, you know, that where it's still a practice of generosity. So this idea of making offerings and making offerings to the purest objects that we could possibly make offerings to. So making offerings to the Guru, for example, requesting the teachings. You know, at the time that Ananda, the Buddha knew he was, you know, passing, and he made a comment to Ananda that Ananda didn't understand, and the comment was basically hinting to him to make a mandala offering to request to stay and teach. So when we have like long life pujas for our gurus, like I think it's this weekend that at Tara Institute they're offering to Geshe Doga long life puja, and they're now offering him one annually. He's same age as the Dalai Lama, so what, 89. And having just been there for the national meeting, he's still going really well. He was playing with the kids and, yeah, amazing, doing well. Anyway, so making those long mandala, long life offerings is requesting to remain in this world system, to continue to teach. Like many times they get offered to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Used to be annually, at least, with Lama Zopa Rinpoche at Kopan, but other centres offering as well. And, you know, sometimes, you know, the Lama will say, okay, because they have to accept you want to make a long life puja offering. They have to accept that. And so, like one time, His Holiness Dalai Lama in Sydney, and the organisers, you know, sort of requested that we be able to make a long life offering. And His Holiness responded, yes, but it has to be no more than 10 minutes long. Usually it's hours and hours and hours. So there was this whole, because you're offering so many holy objects. And so there was this like speed train of offerings going past the stage, because no more than 10 minutes, right? So it's a very elaborate ritual, because Ananda didn't quite get that and didn't make that offering, it is said because of that, but in any case, the Buddha, you know, passed, as we say, passed into parinirvana. So the importance of frequently requesting our teachers to remain and teach, because as we saw with Geshe Zopa, you know, we were so fortunate that when COVID came, he was in Perth, and the plan was that he was going to be going around visiting all the centres, which of course he couldn't do because he stayed here. But it meant we had those teachings for 2 years on Lojong. You know, everyone was able to participate, and they're still there.